Take no formal action regarding federal activities. And I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Jesse Vanderzanden.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Once Mariah gets the PowerPoint up, I'll start to go through it. We retained the background slides from the last work session, so I think we'll just kind of skip past those if we could until, if we could back up one, sorry. So with the last January 26th work session, which was the last council meeting, there was a consensus to send a letter to the Attorney General. That letter was drafted and is complete. We also have a response from the Attorney General. Those were both placed in the City Council packet and are available online. There was a consensus to hold a work session tonight to consider a letter to the legislature regarding federal immigration activities. Councilor Schimmel submitted a draft letter for council consideration. That was also included in your packet. Other items for consideration, if there is sufficient time, was a letter to Congress about some federal legislation and potentially a letter to the district attorney. So with that, if you go to the next slide. So some key dates. I apologize for the formatting. That's weird. But a couple key dates for this state legislative session. It is a short session. This session starts February 2nd, and as you can see, it ends March 8th. There are some very key deadlines associated with this legislative session. The first one is today. Today, a bill must be on a committee agenda or it will die. So we briefed and did this update as late as we kind of possibly could in accordance with when we post the revised packet. So we do have some updates on some legislation. The other key date, as you'll see, is February 16th, and then the one I was going to focus on tonight is February 20th. By February 20th, if the House bills in the Senate and the Senate bills in the House, they must be placed on a committee agenda by this day, or they will also not move any further. And that is on February 20th. That is we have a city council work session on February 23rd. I don't know why this is formatted like this. I apologize. Our next city council work session on this, I believe, is February 23rd. So we will know by then kind of what bills are going to be moving forward and what bills are not going to be moving forward. And then, of course, the next two dates are, if it's passed a chamber, it goes to the other chamber. And then the short session must close, or what they call sine die, by March 8th. Weird, did it again. So the list of bills that we have, there are quite a few, and then I'm going to turn it over to the mayor. I think there are approximately, 12 House bills, and I think there's 6 Senate bills. Staff went through and used what's called the Oregon Legislative Information System, and we used keywords associated with that to try and find out what bills might have been associated with any kind of federal activities associated with immigration. And then also there was some outreach to local representative associated and some additional information about what bills comprise what is called the federal response package. And the federal response package was kind of a list of bills associated with federal immigration activity that have been introduced. And as you'll see, a lot of these are kind of moving through the session as a group. So we've tried to kind of, for lack of a better way, provide a conversation framework for tonight. So the ones that are underlined are the bills that are part of the federal response package. And you'll also see status reports for each one. Some of these bills have no meetings scheduled. They may have had a public hearing, or they may not have had any meetings held associated with them. Not having a meeting scheduled may be an indicator that it may not move forward. Some bills do have a work session scheduled, and those work sessions are tomorrow and the next day. And so, however the mayor would like to, and the council would like to consider this, there are some bills that are kind of immediate that are up today and tomorrow. There's, I think, 2 in the House, and I think 4 or 5 in the Senate. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, and I just want to, for check of understanding, the purpose of this work session too is to look over the letter that Councilor Schimmel wanted to write to the state legislature. And then this is also going on in parallel to the short session. And in a previous work session, the council had come to consensus to support state legislation that was going to respond to federal action. So I don't know the order of events. Do we want to go through Counselor Schimmel's letter first? Or go ahead, Counselor
Real
Faulkner.
quick, I pulled all of the ones that we received from Representative McLean's office, so the federal response.
Yes,
They all have hearings now.
they do.
So,
Okay.
yes,
That
every
must have
single
just
one
been
of
a recent
them.
update, yeah. Okay.
So is that that's an update since 3:30?
I'm sorry, a work session. At least all of them have at least
work
a
session?
work session, and then some of them have additional.
So
Anyway,
ju-
they all have something scheduled beyond today.
So just by way of example, then, those are the ones that are underlined. So House Bill 4079, for example, has a work session on Wednesday. If you go to the next slide, Mariah. So those three, they had not had any meetings scheduled as of 3 o'clock, but they now have a meeting scheduled associated with them, and those are all part of the federal package, so to speak. And then if you would go to the next slide, same with those. One on the bottom was already scheduled, but I'm guessing that what happened was all of them got scheduled as part of that overall response package on the same day and same hearings. So we also have Counselor Schimmel's letter, Mayor, if you would like us to bring that up.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, how do we want to, does the council have a wish on how the organization of that? Do we want to? I mean, I guess I think the goal is to send a letter to the governor or the state legislature about saying Forest Grove's position. So, Counselor Schimmel had written the letter right after last meeting, which did not include some of the legislation they're working on. So I guess my question would be, and I'm just going to say my opinion, I guess it's not a question, is or it could be two in one. There's Counselor Schimmel's letter, but I also think that we need to decide on, but there's also a need based on our previous work sessions, from my understanding, that we would want to say a yay or a nay about having a letter written, and I'm going to ask staff to do it because of the immediacy about our position as a council on this legislation. Is that an accurate assessment? That's the way I see it. There's two things. We had a consensus at our previous work session that we would look at Counselor Schimmel's letter, and we had also discussed about staying on top of state legislation and then, supporting or pushing that forward in some way. Okay, let's talk about Counselor Schimmel's letter first. Let's do that because that was, Counselor Schimmel, you want me to pass it to you?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Well, just to summarize, and you may elect to go a different route. I've actually submitted some portion of this, or the main message, as my personal testimony as neutral. My explanation of that is it's a yes, and yes, we need to do this, and the bill needs to go further. The part that gives me some anxiety is that the bill is being couched as protection, but I read the bill as purely litigious in nature, or after the fact, after harm is being done. It's what provisions there are in response, and one example, well, specifically, it's the 4138.
Which one?
House Bill 4138.
4138. That's the act. I think that's the main sort of overarching bill. But the 4079 is one related to education. That one I have the same concern about, that it's after the fact. There's no provision for actually providing some protection. It's all after the fact. So that's the nature of the letter. Is it's yes, and but I submitted it personally as a neutral.
Can I
Go
ask
ahead, Counselor Faulkner.
Can I ask a question? I mean, so you're reading your letter. I mean, maybe you can offer a little bit of clarification on what do you like? What would we be asking the governor to do specifically in terms of protection? Like that last point that you just made. What is the specific ask? And then how would that even be considered in any of these bills? Because I see those things. Why don't you, if you can answer the first question first, that would be really helpful to me in my understanding.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's a challenge here. Is we're the context is a legislature, so in my version, I'm suggesting that they identify the standards for what a bill would do. And I think at the very end of that version, Mariah, if you scroll down, I think there's something specific or unique to, there we go. Yeah. So at the very end, I have something unique to the governors, declaring an emergency, activating emergency response system, and so forth. So that's what the governor can do, and then I suggest should do. In Bill 4138, in the last section of the bill, it refers to it. It doesn't activate it. It also refers to a state police civilian defense force, civil defense. It refers to it, but doesn't activate it. I think it refers to it in a context of litigation versus as a tool that could be used for protection. So again, this is where the sponsors are couching bills as protection when they're purely litigious in nature or after the fact. And so that's the yes, and it's like, yes, that's important. But people are asking us to stop the suffering. So to me, the number one standard is, how does this stop the suffering? And there's not a bill presented that does that. So that's hence the governor piece at the very end. But that's maybe presumably a separate letter. But I don't know if I clarified.
You have no? Okay. Is there anyone else that has feedback? Yeah, I think I'm trying to, articulate. I think going back to Councilor Gustafson's question, like what are we trying? One of my goals, I don't even know if it's even successful, but it's constantly to try to take actionable steps to slow down the assault on the Constitution, take steps to protect our community. Like, that's what I feel our role. This is what I say to myself every day. Like, what are you going to do today that's going to protect democracy? Like, and everyone has a role. And so I'm just trying to figure out what are, like, being true to the fact that as public servants, as council, like, what is our role right now and how do we do it? So I guess I'm like hesitant to send this letter because I don't know exactly what we're asking for. And I understand what you're saying. Like, what I hear you on is enforceable response to what we're experiencing. So I'm wondering if there's a way we can reconcile. Like right now, the short session, they have things they're going to work on. So do we feel? I mean, what I would propose is that we say, do we want to support some of these House bills, and then do we also ask that as they're working on these and as they're having the meetings and the work sessions, like, to include discussion on how it's going to be enforced. Like, what does that really look like? Like, if you have a law, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how we can thread both things, and I don't know if I have it. Anyone over here have a thought? Councilor Gustafson.
And I think Councilor Schimmel may have alluded to this, but it might be two separate things because we've got the House bills, but I thought this letter was more of a direct request that wasn't quite as associated with the House bills, but what we want. And so for that, I mean, I think it's great. It's a great draft, and we might not send this exact letter, and I wouldn't have expected to send anybody's exact letter. But taking this and deciding, do we want to give them ideas? Is that what we're trying to do, is give them ideas that we're thinking of? What is our goal with this letter?
Are you asking me or asking the council?
I'm asking anyone who wants to answer.
Okay, Councilor Falconer. Council President Valenzuela, thanks for the assist with the mics. You're like all over it tonight. She's like, work out.
I appreciate the work that you put into your letter, and I think that we should continue to discuss its contents and how we might, contribute to the process. But my suggestion would be that we need to decide, I think, tonight, whether to send a letter in support of the package.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we would need to draft that letter very succinctly without a whole lot of concerns. Because I think that's what we're equipped to do tonight. And I think we're under a very short period of time here. And we also don't have staff, and we all don't have the capacity to do a legislative tracking of all of these bills and to attend every single one of these work sessions and hearings to articulate sort of a call and response, like a back and forth. We don't have a lobbyist there in Salem who's working on this for us. I don't know if any of you have the time. I certainly don't, to basically live in Salem for the next 3 weeks. And a lot will be done. We all know, we've all seen legislation go through the sausage making process, right? So it will go under, there will be amendments, there will be fine tuning of all of these things, that some of which might actually address some of our concerns, and we won't need to worry about it. So I think for tonight, I think we should sort of give a yes, up or down vote on, do we support the package? And if so, then we should very succinctly and very broadly say that, if that's our consensus. I don't think that we have time to craft the perfect letter or recommendations for amendments.
Okay, so before I ask for consensus on that proposal, does anyone want to discuss that? Is there any discussion on the floor about council?
I do understand Councilor, Director Schimmel's.
No, we're counselors now.
Counselor. Oh my God.
You're fine,
Okay,
you're fine.
yes.
It's a very confusing
So,
role.
and I agree, we should continue to work on this. I agree we need to support what's there now, but we also need to be more proactive in sending the message about preventing, everything is a consequence, right? And we are really advocating for accountability. What we want to do is put things in place that prevent, that actually protect the community, instead of saying, well, if you do A, B will happen. You know what I mean? So I think we should, yes.
No, keep going.
No.
No, I
It's
like
okay.
I agree with what you're.
So I agree. Because I think we should continue with the effort of making things happen.
So while Council President was speaking, I was like clicking in my head that, the governor signed that executive order for the task force. And I think that one of the things I'd like included in I know I agree with you, by the way, but I think one of the things included in Councilor Schimmel's letter is there is not a mayor on that task force. There is not anyone from local jurisdictions, from cities, saying this is what's going on. The fact there is and that would be something I think that's an ask for enforcement, because it's a whole different world of having local responsibility to your community members telling you this is exactly what's going on. We see it in our cities, and having, I'm not trying to be rude, we're all partners, but I think that that's a huge gap in her task force, is that she does not have a mayor. She does not have the Hillsborough, no mayor sitting on that. And so I would advocate, I agree that for tonight, we should come to a consensus about this legislation and work on the letter a little bit more. I would like on the letter to fine tune, like flush out what that what we're specifically asking for. And I would also like to include a role on that task force. Did you have something?
Well, I appreciate the psychological safety in putting something forward, and it was really content for consideration and crafting, and I know it's my position on this is heavily on there's got to be something to address protection, to stop the bleeding. Like the executive order is purely communication. That's all it is. It's just how do we communicate things after the fact? How do we communicate things to shore up services? It does nothing to protect. My frustration, and I'll look into the camera and say it's complete dishonesty by our state leaders to couch things as protection when it's completely dishonest to say that. Because it's not only letting the folks who are experiencing terror to believe that there's some sense of hope. It's also putting our law enforcement and us in the line of fire, or the community here who are legal observers who are going to put themselves on a line because the laws they pass are going to be unenforceable. So I will join this group in consensus. It's in terms of the bills, it's a yes, and we need some enforcement mechanism. Without enforcement, just please be honest and call it what it is. It's for litigation, for service delivery. Just be honest. I'm fed up with the dishonesty and feigning protection when it doesn't, and it's people are going to get hurt. It's going to cause violent response if we can't get some form of protection. I can't. Otherwise, they're going to pass bills, and we're going to circle back, and we're going to have to try to re-educate our public again on why we can't enforce new state laws as opposed to the old ones. So I don't know how that looks, what that looks like. The yes and. I agree. It's got to be succinct, and I'm not the right person to write it. I want to stop the suffering, and the governor has that authority, and the legislature can ask the governor to exercise that authority. That's my spot.
Okay, any more discussion on the proposal? So I'm hearing there was a proposal to write a letter in support of the package for federal response, but keep it succinct, right? No amendments, just like, hey, just the support. I guess my actual question is this: can staff put together a letter and have it before Wednesday?
Yes.
Because Wednesday is the timeline.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
have a
can't do
letter.
it.
We could actually, if the response is focused on the federal response package, which are the bills that are outlined in the presentation tonight on both the House and the Senate side, staff can have a letter drafted to our representative and to our state senator, and we could have it signed by tomorrow and sent. So the first hearing on some of this is tomorrow, and they go. This week is all work sessions on the 10th, 11th, and 12th, and so. Yeah, but if the letter is about that, and if it's succinct, as Councilor Falconer was mentioning, and it's focused on these bills, we could put together a letter real quickly about that.
Usually we would, in addition to sending the letter directly to our representative and our state senator, would we also submit it to the testimony?
Yes.
Because there's
Yeah.
also another, or a copy, a CC to that email address
Yeah,
on both the House and the Senate.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Now that I'm kind of thinking through, it might be kind of several letters to different committees and to the chair and co-chair of those committees, and so it would probably be several letters now that I kind of think about it. But it would all be centered on these pieces of legislation, and the letters would be directed to the appropriate committee under which the hearing may be held. And then we could certainly copy our local state representative and state senator on each of those correspondence. And if they are on the committee, we can also send it to them as well. So
Go ahead, Counselor Schimmel.
Yeah. Well, I think I've seen a lot of testimonies where it lists multiple bills. If you do the
Yeah.
one letter and just repost that into every bills committee.
that might be another option, just kind of thinking out loud. We could maybe put together one letter with all those bills, but put the co-chairs of each of the committee on one piece, on one letter, and then copy our local delegation. Yeah, good
Okay.
suggestion.
We have about 8 minutes left. And so is there consensus to do that? Can I get a thumbs up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Okay. And then in the interest of time, and I'm sorry, I know it always feels like there's not enough time. Let's discuss, I wanted to circle back to our previous work session, and hopefully Henry and Jesse gave you the heads up about something. I want you to be able to take a moment to clarify a response from last week, and then we need to decide what next meeting, what our focus is that we want staff to bring back. So in the last meeting, we discussed like the administrative warrant and judicial warrant. And then there was some training to staff. And so, Henry, did he prep you on this? Henry, did Jesse tell you I was going to ask you this question? I hope so, because I don't want you to feel blindsided. Just can you go over again what would be the protocol or system if a situation arose where federal agents provided an administrative warrant but not a judicial warrant?
Well, maybe to clarify, the judicial warrant is actually signed by a judge. When we look at administrative warrants, it is signed by somebody within that agency. So in this case, it's signed by somebody in ICE, which really, especially when we talk about search and seizure, violates the Fourth Amendment. But there's some new discussions coming out of the federal government where they say they don't need to have a judicial warrant, and they only need a administrative warrants to detain them. So again, at some point, we're hoping that will be taken up to SCOTUS or Supreme Court, to say, no, you need a judicial warrant, but who knows when that's going to happen. So to answer your question, at this point, if somebody showed up with an administrative warrant, we would not refuse them entry. We would have to document.
Initially, would you say, initially, would you say that, do you have a judicial warrant? And then would you
ask
then,
to see a warrant,
and then, okay, go ahead.
we would ask to see a warrant and then document if it was a judicial warrant or if it was an administrative warrant.
Is staff being coached, or is my understanding was that, in terms of if someone showed up to City Hall or the library and asked, and they had an administrative warrant, that staff would say, we do not consent. Okay, I think that's a very clear point, that we're not just saying, hey, you're coming, sorry, but like, we do not consent to this because it's not a judicial warrant.
Correct.
And then staff would have the option to film, or if there's already right?
So in our training,
Or
we're
not.
asking them to document again. We don't consent to the warrant, but we will document the activity or all the activity that transpires.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so Mariah, can you advance? I think we're on to possible. So there's also the district attorney letter. Could this be a really quick consensus or not consensus? So we did receive letter response from the district attorney, and he basically stated that he doesn't represent cities.
The Attorney General.
Or sorry, gosh, yes, two different things.
Two different things.
Yeah, but so this is where I was going with it. In the Attorney General's letter, he brought up this point that district attorneys are working within a group. And so does this council want to write a letter to District Attorney Barton saying, hey, we support you, we would like you to work in this coalition, right? Am I summarizing that correctly? I hope so. Oh, Councilor Schimmel, what's up?
No. Now I'm only looking at Harry because I want to put a finger in the DA's chest to get us those protocols to our law enforcement. He's months now trying to establish these standard protocols across the county. And I understand it's a fluid situation, but that was a commitment months ago. That's the letter, at least I would recommend.
Okay, so let's write a letter saying we would like him to be, is he a part of the coalition? And also include, what, can you restate that again? 'Cause-
Law enforcement protocols.
yeah, that we would like the law enforcement protocols clear. And then the other thing too, going back to the Attorney General's letter, I'm working regionally with other mayors trying to figure out how we get representation in the Attorney General's office for cities. Like that's happening behind the scenes, not publicly, and but to me that's a huge thing we need. And I don't know, we're trying to work it out. Like how are we going to fund it? Would we share funding between cities? Can we lobby the League of Oregon Cities to help us pay for it? No one really has money. Like the state legislature isn't going to pay for it, right? And and we've heard this before, during COVID, ARPA funding, right? American Rescue Plan dollars went directly to cities because there was this increased cost to protect our community. There's definitely an increased cost right now for cities. Cities are undertaking for response to federal agents. But the difference is, bluntly speaking, the Republicans are not going to Congress is not going to give us, the way that Congress is made up right now, I don't have any hope that they're going to give us funding for that. Go ahead, Councilor Falconer.
Well, and I would just add that it's this administration
Yeah, there we
that
go.
is actually enacting the things that are, so I mean, COVID is I mean, I've heard people use that as sort of like, and it's not an analog, I mean, it's not an analog, it's because you've got COVIS was a thing that we were all responding to. So even if Congress did put together a funding package, for us to be able to respond to federal activities, it would be nonsensical for the president to sign that legislation.
Exactly.
So I just
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, can I just get back to the FAFO?
Yeah, get back to it.
That is, so I mean, I think that it's maybe a model. That they actually, I mean, so this is a group of district attorneys who also have, I mean, if you go to that website, there's actually like a donation page, and there are people who are really asking, like, how can I help? Like residents in communities that are being really impacted, saying, can I help the city pay its legal fees? And so I think that this is one way, something like this group, that your group could potentially, be able to mirror.
Thank you, Councilor Schimmel. Councilor Falconer. I was looking at you to talk. Thank you, Councilor Falconer, for your comments. And go ahead, Councilor Schimmel. Jeez.
Well, that reminded me of a bill related to uniforms, and with all the places on the uniform that needs to have ID. I don't recall some of those locations being on our uniforms. So are you assessing that particular bill? And I don't know what the number is, but would you have to replace all your uniforms as it's written today?
The answer is no. Is when you really look at the bill, the only significant difference is, as statewide, we already probably follow most of that protocol. The big one will be, what are the exemptions of wearing masks?
Yeah.
And that will probably be the biggest change for most policies. It won't be a financial impact as much as it's going to be a operational procedural change.
Okay, so we are running short on time. What is the wish of the council for the next? We have another meeting next time. Go ahead, Councilor Schimmel.
Suggestion. I've sent a list of my interests. I don't know if everyone can send their interests, and you and Jesse assess how much time we need, because 30 minutes was not enough. I mean, we could easily spend 2 hours wrestling through a list of things that, and half of them are following up from the last two conversations.
Right. And the 30 minutes today was mainly because it was just for the letter, because we agreed to the second meeting of the month. So I'm always going to try to have it be 45 to an hour. It just really depends on the agenda. I did not get a chance to see your list prior to this meeting. Jesse said you sent it like this afternoon. So if we could all
that's
pick a
okay.
couple
I'm just
things, okay.
suggesting for the next time we send it, our interests further in advance, so that as you and Jesse are formulating the agenda and the amount of time you have that information.
Which is fine, but then I want people to share out their top 2 or 3 so we can have I don't want the decision to be Jesse and mine's outside of a public meeting.
No, I'm not asking
Oh,
you
okay.
to, suggesting that you determine what we talk about. I'm just suggesting that the amount of having more time.
Oh, okay. Right.
That if you want us to be specific, I can do that.
Well, I think what we try to do is for the next meeting, like staff has to prepare staff materials for the work session. So we like to hear from you all going into the next meeting. So are there any topics for the next meeting?
Well, following up on the data collection or reporting, whether it's through our internal or external seems to be where we get something. So data was one thing. The other is follow up on the operationalizing the emergency or the contingency planning and emergency management activation standards, or what criteria we'll have.
Okay, anyone else have an additional topic? Councilor Falconer.
I'm hoping that at our next one, we will have a visit from our city attorney. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll have the city attorney here. So what did we have stuff already on there for the next one, for the next meeting? Did we already have a list for the next meeting based on our last meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry. The other one was federal legislation. If we wanted to talk about that tonight, that would be a carryover. I think updates on the emergency plan, but also just one of the takeaways was if there was any pending litigation that the city may want to consider that are being, by other cities or counties or municipalities. If so, what that potentially looked like. Those are the takeaways that I had, Mayor.
Yeah, and I think that I'm always like that. For me, and I don't know if there's consensus, if there's always pending litigation, that would take precedent, and then that would end up being an executive session, right? So, do you have enough? From us to go? Okay. Okay. With that, I'm going to adjourn this work session. Thank you. Good evening. I would like to call to order this meeting of the Forest Grove City Council at 7:11 on February 9th. Will the city recorder please call roll?
Councillor Gustafson? Here. Council President Valenzuela?
Here.
Councillor Schimmel?
Here.
Councillor Falconer?
Here.
Councillor Martinez?
Here.
Councillor Marshall?
Here.
Mayor Wenzel?
Here. We acknowledge the land on which Forest Grove is located rests on the traditional village sites of the Atfalati, a tribe of the Kalapuas who originally inhabited the Tualatin Plains, including Forest Grove. They are now part of the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde. Will the audience and the council please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty. as Black History Month. Oh, hang on a minute. I'm breaking the rules. Testing. Is this good? Okay. We're going to start over. Whereas the Forest Grove City Council takes pride in recognizing February 2026 as Black History Month, honoring the many notable contributions of Black Americans. And whereas the theme of Black History Month this year is A Century of Black History Commemorations, marking 100 years since the inaugural week-long observance of Black History in 1925, and urging us to explore the impact and meaning of Black history and life commemorations in transforming the status of Black peoples in the modern world. And whereas the recognition of Black History Month has made February a time when Black history finds its way not simply into schools, but into cultural heritage sites, public squares, workplaces, houses of worship, and homes across the land and across oceans, offering opportunities to discover and learn more about African American history. And whereas there is no American history without Black history. And as we mark the 250th anniversary of the U.S. independence, we recognize the importance of telling not only an inclusive history, but a true one, of recommitting ourselves to looking unflinchingly at the past, including the parts that are uncomfortable, unflattering, and even shameful, so that we may work towards the lasting institutional and societal change necessary to create a better future and a better America. And whereas today and every day we celebrate African, African American, Afro-Latino, Afro-Caribbean, and Black heritage, and encourage all people to recognize and confront systemic racism in our neighborhoods and the wider community by standing in the gap of every opportunity, bridging barriers with fearlessness and determination to fight against racism and bigotry, and improve representation of Black people in all facets of our society. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Forest Grove does hereby proclaim February 2026 as Black History Month in Forest Grove, Oregon, Washington County, and calls upon all citizens to observe this month with the appropriate programs and activities and reflections, and to continue our efforts to create a world that is more just and prosperous for all. Thank you.
Ahora en español. Proclamación. Considerando que el Consejo Municipal de la ciudad de Forest Grove se enorgullece de reconocer el mes de febrero de 2026 como el mes de la historia afroamericana, honrando las numerosas y notables contribuciones de las personas afroamericanas, y considerando que el tema del mes de la historia afroamericana de este año es un siglo de conmemoraciones de la historia afroamericana que marca los 100 años desde la primera observancia de una semana de duración de la historia afroamericana en 1925, e invita a explorar el impacto y el significado de las conmemoraciones de la historia y la vida afroamericana en la transformación del estatus de los pueblos negros en el mundo moderno. Y considerando el reconocimiento del mes de la historia afroamericana ha convertido a febrero en un tiempo en el que la historia afroamericana se abre paso no solo en las escuelas, sino también en los sitios de patrimonio cultural, plazas públicas, lugares de trabajo, espacios de culto y hogares a lo largo del país y más allá de sus fronteras, ofreciendo oportunidades para descubrir y aprender más sobre la historia afroamericana. Y considerando que no existe historia estadounidense sin la historia afroamericana, y que al conmemorar 250 años de la independencia de los Estados Unidos, reconocemos la importancia de contar no solo una historia inclusiva, sino una historia verdadera, de afirmar nuestro compromiso de mirar de frente nuestro pasado, incluidas aquellas partes incómodas, poco halagadoras e incluso vergonzosas, para poder avanzar hacia el cambio institucional y social duradero necesario para crear un futuro mejor y una mejor nación. Considerando hoy y todos los días, celebramos la herencia africana, afroamericana, afrolatina, afrocaribeña y negra, y alentamos a todas las personas a reconocer y confrontar el racismo sistémico en nuestros vecindarios y en la comunidad en general, actuando con valentía en cada oportunidad, superando barreras con determinación y firmeza para luchar contra el racismo y la intolerancia y mejorar la representación de las personas negras en todos los ámbitos de nuestra sociedad. Ahora, por lo tanto, el Ayuntamiento de la ciudad de Forest Grove proclama por la presente el mes de febrero de 2026 como el mes de la historia afroamericana.
Thank you, Council President Valenzuela, for your help. We are now moving on to item B, which is public comment. Public comment time provided for anyone wishing to speak to the City Council on an item not on the agenda or on the agenda but not scheduled for a public hearing. Comments are limited to 2 minutes unless additional time is granted by the presiding officer. The public comment period shall not exceed 30 minutes unless a majority of councilors present vote to extend the time. Zoom attendees may use the raise hand option to be called on. Okay, our first public comment is from, I really feel bad when I don't know how to pronounce names, but I think it's David Diane. Okay, Dion, I'm going to try again. Thank you for being patient with me. Did you say it was David Diani? Dion. Thank you.
I would like to ask everyone in this room who has taken an oath to defend or uphold the Constitution to please raise your hand. If your oath released you from that duty, if it becomes dangerous, please lower your hand. Thank you. The last time I spoke to this council, I expressed my fear. That fear remains. There has been a caesura in highly publicized murders of citizens by ICE, but a pause is not an end. ICE agents continue to claim immunity to the strictures of the Constitution. Schools are instructing staff to treat the presence of ICE as any other active shooter. In previous discussions, we've heard about the lack of manpower. The Forest Grove Police cannot stop ICE if ICE chooses to come here in force. We have heard that our police force is reluctant to put officers in harm's way to protect people against ICE. I understand this. You are, many of you, just as fearful as I am. You have heard many of the same rumors that I have, that ICE will be surged to Portland soon. You are, as I am, frustrated by the framing of litigation as protection. Unlike me, you have the power to act on a citywide scale. You have the power to reach out and formally ask for assistance from Hillsborough, Cornelius, Portland, all of our neighbors. If more officers from our neighbors are needed to defend us from illegal violence, then that is what you must seek. Officers of the law cannot interfere with ICE's legal activities, but it is their duty to prevent violence, prevent murder, to keep us safe. When an officer puts on their uniform, they accept the risk of violence. Do not force the people of Forest Grove to accept that risk in your state.
Thank you, Mr. Dion. Michael Johnson.
Michael Johnson. I'm with Indivisible Forest Grove. And I'm not necessarily speaking for them. I think I'm speaking probably for just about everybody here. In that if anybody was at the town hall recently held by the Attorney General, you know how desperate some people are feeling. And we know which people those are. It's a community within our community, and we are not able to protect them. And I can't tell you how frustrating that is. And I heard it today in your discussions earlier. And I quite agree that a lot of the legislation that's being posed is going to be only symbolic, or at best, a threat of litigation later. But maybe that's got some power to it if we publicize it enough. If we get DAs out there constantly saying, hey, guys, you may be able to pull this stuff off because you can, but nevertheless, there will be accountability someday. You're breaking the law, and there's no pardon for a state crime. Maybe that'll slow them down a little bit. The only thing that I know is that every citizen, whether they swore an oath to the Constitution or not, has an obligation to defend our democracy, and the time is now. We are running out of time. They are desperately trying to consolidate power. And you think those prisons they're building are just for immigrants? Someday we're going to be in those prisons if we don't get busy and resist. Resist. Resist.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Dale Feek.
Mayor Wenzel, President Melsman, and councilors, Dale Feek. I have 3 topics. Congresswoman Bonamici spoke January 28th at the high school. You entered.
No.
The superintendent of public schools introduced her. She spoke, main thing of all, and you concluded the presentation. And you were there, Councilor Falconer. Main thing was fear and safety. And there were ways to address that. And I hope everybody does what they said they were going to do there. I do support you, and it goes to the other 2 topics I have. I sent you emails already. There are links in that. But I support what you said, Mayor. Get the mayors involved. There's a group of you. Work hard to do what you need to do as mayors, and the local actions make a difference. Please do that. The email, first one I sent to you, had to do with clean water services, work sessions, and business meetings. Now, they've separated that. Now, there are clean water services separate from the county. So you have a work session and you have a business meeting. The first one is tomorrow, and I'll make public comment to the clean water services during the 9 o'clock session. Second thing has to do, well, and there was a fine of $31,603 to Clean Water Services because they failed to conduct initial performance test on its engine generator, Rock Creek wastewater treatment facility. Most people don't know that. And I said in an email, I'm sure that Clean Water Service will be much more able to deal with these kinds of issues with new organizational structure set up by the county commissioners, cooperation of the staff of Clean Water Services. I'm pleased with that. Second thing had to do with energy crisis in Oregon, 4-part series. I encourage you to all read those stories in the Oregonian. The last thing also, COTEC names panel to study data centers impact. Huge tax breaks are not on agenda. It should be on the agenda. They should not get those tax breaks. Please read what I emailed you.
Thank you, Mr. Feek. Carol Allery.
Hello.
Good evening.
Okay, so last week I heard something that made some sense to me. It says, Lying is always loud, but quiet is truth. Truth is usually quiet, okay? Proverbs 12:22 says, and I love to bring the word of God to you guys, because we need to have truth in the midst of all the excitement we have going on. The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. 1 Corinthians 13:6 says, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in truth. Proverbs 12:22 says, blessed is the man who fears the Lord. Perfect love casts out all fear. Have a good day.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Ellery. Thank you. There are no other individuals signed up for public comment, but I would like to give anyone in the audience who may not have seen our sign-up sheet an opportunity to speak for public comment if they so wish. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to give public comment? Okay, thank you for those of you who have given public comment in the past and continue to do so. Oh, on Zoom, if you are on Zoom and you would like to give public comment, could you please use the raise hand feature at this point? I see none. So we're going to move on to item C on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Let me get my stuff together. Items considered, the consent agenda are items considered routine and that are adopted with a single motion without discussion. Councilors may remove items per the motion to adopt. Any removed items are discussed and acted upon following the approval of the remaining items. What is the wish of the council?
Move to approve it.
Second.
Okay, the consent agenda was moved by Councilor Marshall and seconded by Councilor Martinez. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, hearing none, the consent agenda is approved by the Forest Grove City Council in a 7-0 vote. Item D on the agenda is additions or deletions. City Manager, any additions or deletions?
I do have one item, Mayor, that I'd like the council to consider. At the January 26th work session regarding the police facility, the council reached a consensus to have another work session on the police facility on February 23rd. I'd like to see if there is a consensus amongst the council to postpone that work session until March 9th. The reason for the postponement is city staff has applied for a grant at the state legislature, and we should know the outcome of that grant prior to that work session, and that could have an impact on the work session. So if there's a consensus for that, I'd like to move the police facility work session from February 23rd to March 9th.
Okay, can I get a thumbs up if you want to? Okay, there's consensus to move that. Thank you, City Manager. 2D, are any additions or deletions proposed by council? Seeing none, we're moving on to item E, which is presentations. The council will hold questions until the end of each presentation. A 2-minute reminder will be given to the presenter to conclude remarks. I'm really excited about all these presentations, just a little editorializing. Our first presentation tonight is from ODOT, and it's our East TV Highway updates. So it's like Quince to U Streets. Anyways, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Stephanie Turner from ODOT. Hi, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. And thanks for having me over Zoom. And I couldn't make it in person, I'm sorry. So with that, it looks like someone's sharing the presentation. So I will just, oh, there we go. So thank you for that. So as you mentioned, I'm Stephanie Turner. I'm the Area Manager West for ODOT Region 1. So primarily Washington County. And I'm here to talk about the work we're doing out in Forest Grove. Next slide, please. So we are installing a new pedestrian crossing at A&B Row, more commonly known as the Rose Grove Mobile Home Community Park. And that's on OR 8, about halfway between Quince and Mountain View. We had bid the job, but there were some changes in disenfranchised business rules from the federal government. So we had to take the language about that out and then rebid. So we will be constructing this spring, summer, but it is part of there are other parts of the project in Hillsborough, so I don't know right now when exactly the contract will be at this spot, but I'm happy to come back or share when I know more. And And then very excited to talk about the new project at OR8 Adara Ave and U. So we're installing a new traffic signal with lighting and curb ramps. We're also coordinating with Forest Grove on their Safe Routes to School project. So the projects will tie in together. And also with TriMet with the future OR8 BRT improvements. We're currently just kicked off design and construction is expected in 2028 and 2029. Next slide, please. So we were able to advance this project into this step because of the help from Forest Grove. Forest Grove applied for and was granted an earmark from the federal government and provided that along with the match so we could advance the work up into 2025. So we were in design, both right away starting in 27 and then construction again in 29. Most recently, along Highway 47, we replaced 13 intersections with ADA curb ramps. And then coming up, we're also replacing curb ramps at 2 intersections in 2027. And that's Pacific Avenue and Mountain View. And that their work will connect into that Safe Routes to School project that you all are delivering. And then baseline at U. And then in addition to that, we just recently finished last year, I guess, an arts project that added flashing beacons on 47 at Maple and B Streets to warn drivers of the intersections. Next slide. That was really fast. I'm sorry it was so quick. Are there any questions for me or comments?
Yes, Stephanie, I'm going to have a bunch, but I'm going to wait till the end. So Counselor Schimmel had one. I don't know why I keep listening for you. Did you have one?
We can't be confused with each other.
No, it's just me. I'm confused.
We're just so happy.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for being here. Well, there's particular intersections I hear a great number of concerns about. One is the Quince and Highway 8 and that northbound slip lane in particular. I know we're waiting for the crossing paint to be laid down. I know we've asked for signage that's been turned down. I do believe that getting people away from that intersection entirely is important once that midway crossing is done. But I'm concerned in the next couple years of the safety of that slip lane in particular. And just passing by it today, the water was just collected right there at the ADA ramp, which I think happens in other locations too, but it just was ironic that with the intention of improving accessibility, we make it less accessible if there's water collecting or if the crossing of those kind of slip lanes proves more dangerous. So and this is just relaying just some of the number of concerns, especially as that community is largely a retired or senior living community.
Any other questions?
Sorry. I was just going to quickly respond. I hadn't heard about the ponding, so I will share that with the construction team. I know that they're not fully completed and make sure that the contractor knows about that. So thank you for that.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm just so happy to see all this, the list of presentations. It's
Counselor,
going to look great.
go ahead, Counselor Faulkner.
I do have a quick question if you know the answer. I'm not sure. I mean, because I think the TV Highway project is so, it's further away in the future. But when you say coordinating with them on the bus rapid transit, do you know at this point whether that includes closing the gap on that north side of TV Highway where there's just no sidewalks at all? So, I mean, I understand, your ODOT project will include, some curb improvements and crossing and then tying that into Mountain View. But I'm concerned a little bit about, creating those, but not closing the gap on that north side, sort of west of Mountain View between where this other project that you were just indicating. So there's that gap in front of the Ford dealership, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's waiting until TV Highway project, or will that be included in these projects?
Stephanie, I'm going to bring up our mastermind engineer who works on all these projects to help too. Thank you, Greg, for being.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Greg Robertson, Mastermind. The answer to your question is the gap of the sidewalk from U Street to Rose Grove is going to be completed as part of the Safe Routes to School project.
Okay.
We're doing some gaps down around the railroad crossing by the middle school, and we are also completing that portion. So we'll be coordinating with ODOT and are having ongoing discussions right now about the signalization and then just permitting of the work that we're going to be doing in there right away.
Okay, so that sidewalk there will be a sidewalk in front of the Ford
Yes, there will be.
dealership.
Yep.
Part of this project.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. That answers my question.
Don't leave. Since you're up here, Greg, sorry, Stephanie, I'm going to circle back to you.
No.
But since you're up here, I just think I'm like so immensely proud and excited by all the work we're doing in the East Forest Grove with transportation, safety, the East Side Park. And I'm just wondering, I'm saying this to Jesse, to you, and Lane, if you're listening to me, but it'd be really cool if we could have like an East Side livability timeline and mapping, because I'm curious as to like how this is all going to play out, right? So we're going to get this is based on my understanding, we're going to get the crosswalk this spring. Then East Side Park is being built this spring and summer. And then Safe Routes to School 2027.
Highly dependent on our successful negotiations with the railroad, which is usually more difficult than the federal government.
With the railroad?
They take their
I
sweet
know.
time.
I was hoping you were going to just
We are
the
working-
dreaded railroad.
Mayor, we are working on developing a timeline based on a conversation we had with Councilor Schimmel last week to kind of lay out a sequence of what's going to be happening in that area.
Okay, cool. Great. Well, thank you for staying and
Okay.
answering the questions. And, Stephanie, I just wanted to say, well, I guess I have a question. I'm going to ask a little bit of a tough question, but really just a lot of appreciation. There's major safety improvements that we needed in Forest Grove. That U Street intersection is one of the most unsafe intersections in our community, not just for vehicles, but especially for pedestrians. And so I'm really just excited about it. But I do have a concern with transportation funding. I know it's in the plan, I know it's in the STIP, but I'm just wanting to make sure that this is going to continue to happen no matter what.
It's going to happen. Like, I know that like it's really hard to say everything for certain, but the funding's been secured. It's in the STIP. The only reason that right-of-way and construction are programmed yet is because of the new CIP process. And so those will be programmed once we get to 30% plans.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And this is on public record, so thank you for
I know that's what oh, I guess pending like a tragedy that none of us see coming. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. Okay, and then next up for our second presentation is the Council Creek Regional Trail with Renus Kalfkins. I hope I didn't butcher your name. And he's our Washington County Senior Project Engineer. Hello, sir.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Perfect. So yes, my name is Renus Kalfkins. I'm a Senior Project Manager with Washington County, managing the Council Creek Regional Trail as well as the Fernhill Maple. So we'll go over Council Creek first. So for the agenda, I'll go over the project background, the design, funding, the status of the two projects, why we have two projects, as well as the near-term communications and reporting, and then our next steps with this project. So for the background, the Council Creek Regional Trail came from the master plan, which was adopted and completed in 2015. The two corridors were identified, the north-south, which is more long-term, no funding is identified yet, and then the east-west connector from Hillsborough to Forest Grove. That one had the Council Creek Regional Trail Working Group, which was a partnership of the county, the cities, Metro, TriMet, and ODOT, and they helped really build momentum to secure funding. They achieved 3 grants. The first one was a regional flexible fund allocation, which allowed them to start with preliminary design on the trail. And then from there, they applied for a Rebuilding American Infrastructure through Sustainability and Equity, a RAISE grant. That one, they told us to reduce the request, which we did. And then in order to reduce that request, we took out all the road crossings. So the RAISE grant is a direct recipient to the county to design and construct the trail portion only. For the crossings, they went out for another regional flexible fund allocation, which we're awarded, and that is through Metro. ODOT manages those funds, and then we deliver the project. So we've got 2 funding, technically 3 funding sources. The first was just for preliminary, and then the trail, and then the crossings project. So for the trail, the design started in September of 2023. We had an open house in May of 24. We had our environmental permits in August of 2024, and by September we had our design complete. The reason for that very close timeline is the federal funds for the RAISE grant had very strict timelines we had to adhere to that also required that we stayed within the rail corridor. The rail corridor at the time was owned by ODOT, so we would not have the actual rights to construct and maintain the trail yet. Federal Highway had said if you get your design done, your permits in, submit, we'll hold, we'll review, and then over the next year, once you get your right-of-way sorted, we'll do another precursory review and then set you free to construct. That's what we did. So in July, ODOT sold the property to TriMet. TriMet issued an easement to the county to maintain and construct a trail. And while in 2025, what we also did, because we had a bit of time, we refined our design a little bit. We did some additional geotechnical investigations for the bridge to really try and reduce some of the risk in construction. And we needed an amendment to get through federal highway and that, which we got. And then while we were doing that, we were getting every other little permit we may need for erosion control from for our 1200C, as well as going through the City of Hillsborough for their permits. So come December of last year, we had every permit, design done, right-of-way secured, everything submitted to Federal Highway. And right now, the grant is being reviewed by the Grant Review Task Force. We don't have any direction for how long that review is going to take. We don't know what the direction is going to be. Our local Federal Highway Office, they're trying to be as accommodating and helpful as they can, but right now the Grant Review Task Force is reviewing our grants. We're just waiting right now, but we're ready to go. So right here, if you've seen our open house, these are some just exhibits from the open house for the trail cross section. It'll be a 12-foot trail, 2 feet on either side. What isn't depicted here is our treatment trench. We'll have a trench on sometimes the north, sometimes the south side of the trail to collect any runoff, treat before discharging. There are 3 sections. We had to narrow the trail to 8 feet with 2-foot shoulders. That was in order to ensure the trail stayed within the rail corridor. And then there's 1 section in Forest Grove where we narrowed to 10 feet. The reason for that is some wetlands and some other sensitive areas within the area. Some 2 exhibits. So that's the new bridge we'll be building over Dairy Creek. And the reason we're trying to get the trail out now, we need 2 summers to construct the bridge. We've got to remove the old ballast of the railroad. We've got to build a temporary bridge and construct a new one. So there's a lot of work, and we need 2 seasons in order to do that. We can only work along the creek during certain months of the year. And then the cattle crossing, there's a property that is bisected by the trail embankment where a property owner uses it to cross his cattle. So we'll remove that old ballast, put in a new box culvert, maintain that connectivity for the cattle. So that was the trail portion. Next, we've got the enhanced crossings. Preliminary design was done in February with the previous grant, and then we had the new grant for the river funds. We started off the final design in January. We are expected to have an open house in April of this year. Oh, yeah, a few months away. And so with the open house, I spoke to City of Cornelius Council last week. Initially, we were going to just do the open house online, but we heard a lot of requests to do it in person to make sure we gather more of the community, which we can accommodate, no problem. So it will be at the City of Cornelius Library. We're sorting out dates with them still, and we'll host the open house there, and everything will be translated into Spanish as well. And so the construction for the crossings is anticipated in January, but everything is contingent on finding out when we can go to construction on the trail. ODOT is the administrator of these funds, and we have been told we wouldn't be allowed to go to construction on the crossings without the trail, which makes sense. We can't build crossings to nowhere. But so as far as our construction timeline, it's really contingent now on hearing back from Federal Highway and getting some direction that we can actually go into construction. And then we can tie in how the two projects will relate to each other in the construction phase. So just some concepts. So this is the crossing at U Street. So all of these will be looked at again. Out of all the crossings, only 3, maybe 4 are actually county jurisdictional roadways. Everything else, there are 23, so 19 of the remaining are all city roads, either City of Cornelius, Hillsborough, or Forest Grove. So we are working with all our city partners. We'll be setting up meetings with city staff to make sure we are meeting those requirements, meeting the needs here. So, and go to the next slide. This is just a zoomed in view of that crossing. Right now, what's the concept for U Street is a pedestrian refuge median in the middle. With the approach, we'll have this a signage ahead. The crossing will accommodate whatever the traffic, the ADT, the speed, all those will be analyzed, reanalyzed for each of the crossings to ensure we're providing a crossing that is adequate for the road type. Near-term communications reporting. Right now, the cities in the county are working together on the near-term communications. We've decided everything's going to come to the project because we'll be out there for several years for construction, for maintenance requests, all coming to the LUT Proj website or email address. From there, we'll disseminate it out to whoever needs to be. If it's for debris or pickup, we might reach out to Washington County Solid Waste or reach out if we need some backup, if there's a partner that can maybe assist us with that. Safety is under the jurisdiction of local law enforcement. So when you call non-emergency or 911, it will be dispatched accordingly. And then for long-term, actually, it'll be on the next slide, please. So next steps. So just to touch on the county on maintenance, the county is convening meetings on the long-term government operations governance plan. The idea right now is that Washington County Parks would take over maintenance of the entire trail. The details of that is being worked out with our planning group. As I said, we will be in construction till at least 2028 if we get the go-ahead now. So we've got a few years to work out the final details to the long-term maintenance, but until we finish with construction, capital projects will be the center contact there. Construction of the trail, we're waiting for Federal Highway, and then the enhanced crossings design started. Notices of the open house will go out at least 2 weeks prior, and hopefully we get the go-ahead for the trail so that we can get the crossings out right after that. And any questions on the Council Creek Regional Trail?
Okay, any questions from council? I have a question, but I don't want to cut anyone off. Okay, I'm going to go for it then. Thank you for the presentation. My question's about, and I'm going to be like fully transparent. It's actually a question for staff and all of us. I appreciate that you're going to have the open house information translated into Spanish and have that be accessible. But, as we all live with like engagement, I guess I want to know a little bit more. And again, this is not just for the county. This is for us with like our state of the city, and our engagement is how do you really let people in the Latina, communities know like, hey, this is what we're doing and this is the benefit. So I guess that's my question is how are you also sharing out that there's this open house information to engage people? And then the other thought that I was having was then it's also like feels like not safe for some community members to go and access the things in our community. And so I'm just wondering if we could work with GroveLink or the county could work with GroveLink or the city could, when we have our state of the city to say, hey, we could go to these areas and pick community members up and bring them to the open house and take them home. Because my understanding, is that public transportation is a very safe way for people to travel right now if they're feeling not safe in their own vehicles getting places. So I don't necessarily need answers right now. I'm just thinking that, as Mr. Johnson and as we all sit here and think like, what are we doing to protect democracy? And I'm like, and you know, all these things collide in my head. I'm so proud of the work the city's doing to increase safety, to provide recreation, to do all these things. You know, and then there's also a community that's living in fear of not being able to access that. So like, maybe it's not just fighting and slowing down tyranny. It's also like trying to continue to create safety so people can live, so people have livability. So anyways, those are just my deep thoughts that aren't necessarily needing an answer, but I think that we as cities, counties, and the state need to figure that out as well. Anyways, that's all I got.
I will say with the outreach, we will have the open house virtual as well, and then our outreach, we send out all our mailers also translated. We post on all social media accounts, and then we release the information to the cities if they want to post on. We've had some cities put it in water bills, all sorts of things to help get the word out. So there's different in those mechanisms. That's just getting the word out. But it is a curious question about how getting people those want to attend the open house, getting them there.
And have you reached out to Centro Cultural and then Adelante Mujeres? I would say that like also utilizing community-based organizations that have a trusting relationship with the community they serve is always a win, right? Like that's always a way to go about it. So I do appreciate you just letting me kind of ramble as my process was going. Any other questions on Council Creek? Go ahead, Council President.
Besides the open house, are you going to have like a QR thing where people can complete a survey and things like that? Because for some of us who are teachers, for example, that would be very useful to have. We can have our students complete something like that, you know, at the high school or something, and do a survey. That would be of great value, you know, because that's one place where they're feeling kind of safe. But like Mayor Wenzel said, reaching out to our communities. We did a lot of work, community engagement work for Council Creek about 5 or 6 years ago at Centro Cultural for Metro. So it would be something great to reach out to them and Adelante. And with that QR code thing, you know, that goes a long way.
Yeah, all our mailers have the QR codes to the website and to the open house.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other? So I don't think you get to leave the hot seat. So we're going to have our third presentation, which is really timely. I don't know if you realize this, but there was another accident at that intersection just last week. And so we are well overdue for some safety improvements at this intersection. So I'm happy to hear this update and then ask you a couple hard questions.
Perfect. So with the Fernhill Maple, Oregon 47, so with this one, again, we'll go over the location, the partners in this project, and in that slide, you'll just have to click through. There'll be a few things popping up. And then the coordination and next steps. So project location, yeah, we're right at the south end of Forest Grove. I think everyone's familiar with where Fernhill Maple 47 is. So the partners of the project, so right here, this is our current design. There's still some tweaks to work out with ODOT. We've got our rain gardens there to address rain runoff and everything. But the real intricacies with this project has come with everyone that is over right at this intersection. So first click, that's the railroad right-of-way that is owned by the railroad. The Fernhill crossing there is there by permit. Next one, that is the track which is owned by Union Pacific. And next is that the yellow line is Portland Western. So Union Pacific owns the tracks, Portland Western leases the tracks, we're there by permit, and ODOT Rail oversees the railroads in general. So with our working through this process, we're going through all three, and every iteration has been quite something. We're working through that. And then next, that green block, that is City of Hillsborough property. They have a building on that site, and our sidewalk does impact that property. So we're working with the city there to dedicate the necessary right-of-way, and then we'll be removing that building as well because we impact it. Next. That little blue square in the southeast. So north is just Maple, south will be Fernhill, west will be towards the more my left. But anyway, so southeast, southwest there with the blue, that is private property acquisition. We will be encumbering upon a private owner there, and there will be some acquisition there. Next one. On the southeast there, that property is owned by Clean Water Services, and we're impacting them as well. We need to get a bit of right-of-way dedication from our partners there for that sidewalk. Next. The yellow line there with the dot right in our center turn lane is Bonneville Power Administration, BPA. They've got a major power line that runs right down the corridor, and we are impacting that first pole right there. The next. The orange line is Forest Grove Light and Power. They've got their facility that runs across down Mayport to Fern Hill. They've got several utilities attached to their pole as well. The red is Portland General Electric, PGE. They've got a line that comes up and then across down 47. And then they've got a guy wire that crosses Fern Hill there. The green is a sanitary sewer for Clean Water Services that we're coordinating with. The orange is Northwest Natural. They've got their facility as well that runs through this intersection. And we all know the Maple Street is Forest Grove. Fern Hill is the county. Blue is ODOT jurisdiction. And then the red is Bonneville Power. They own that parcel. Luckily, we avoid it. So no impacts there, no land use needed for them. And then the pink is the new signal arms that we'll be installing, and the maroon are the gate arms for the railroad. So all of this working together. So we can go to the next slide. I'll go into the coordination first and we can jump back to this. So where we've been with this project, the coordination, in September we got our urban design concurrence from ODOT. That is the first step we needed to get through with the state that sets our conditions of our design. That opened the door to allow us to get our state traffic engineer conditional approval for the new signal, which we received in February of 2025. That then opened the door to then start with the coordination with ODOT Rail and the signal timing. And then also part of the conditional approval, we needed to get in front of the Mobility Advisory Committee. They oversee all freight movements in the state on state highways, so we needed to provide an update on this project to them. We got their concurrence on the project in September. And right now, the next major step with ODOT is getting the final signal approval. The railroad, we are trying to get our rail order from them, which is an edit to the current order. So as I said, we've got to work with Union Pacific, Portland Western, ODOT oversees it, but it's directly with the railroads and trying to get through their thing to amend the permits because they've got their own interests and making sure that everything is kosher and meets the requirements there. Once we get that rail order, we get into the construction and maintenance agreement with them, which is more just the technicalities of paying them for the long-term maintenance of the crossing, as well as what the estimate is for their construction work to do it. And the big thing we're looking at right now is the BPA relocation. So if you jump back to the previous slide. So in this image, so BPA being that yellow line, that is really the first major thing we need in order, because even if we had our signal approval design done and the crossing order, we still would not be able to start any construction with the utilities in place. However, Bonneville Power is starting their relocation now in May. And thank you, City, for your letter, and really appreciate Forest Grove Light and Power. They've been a huge partner in getting us through everything with Bonneville Power, and they're starting their relocation now. With them starting their relocation now in May, they possibly could start in April. That sets the dominoes in effect with the utilities. So once BPA has moved, that allows Forest Grove Light and Power to relocate their poles, raise their lines, to get out of having to be over those. If you go back to the previous one again, please. Yeah, if you look at the orange line, once Forest Grove Line and Power, they get out of the conflict with our signal heads. And they also avoid the conflict with the railroad gate arms. Once they're relocated, all the other utilities on their pole can then start their relocation work. So you've got Comcast, you've got Zio that are all out there as well. Ziply's on the pole, they said they're going to go underground. So all of those start moving, and then PGE will start their relocation as well. They're going over the other gate arm as well. So with the BPA movement starting, that sets the dominoes. That starts getting all the utilities relocated, so it cleans up our construction sites when we're ready to get out there. Can you go to the next few slides, please? So next steps we'll be looking at with this project is the right-of-way acquisition. We haven't started that because we needed to know when we'd get our rail order and the construction maintenance agreement. There's a TCE which requires dates, and we don't want to overextend how long we need that temporary construction easement for. So right away, we'll start in April. May, June now, possibly even April, we'll start the relocation of or BPA will do their relocation work. Also, what you'll see out there next week is there's a tree in the railroad right-of-way that needs to be relocated or needs to be removed for the utility relocates as well. That tree is going to be removed next week. So we're really setting the stage to get the utilities relocated. So then through July, January, we'll have the utilities periodically out on site doing their relocation work, setting up and clearing out the way for our construction work. August is when we're targeting to have our design complete final submission to the state for our acceptance. November, we're hoping to advertise, but that is pending the construction maintenance agreement with the railroad, and then construction in March on the actual intersection. That is also depending as long as we get our construction maintenance agreement with the railroad intact. We're looking at other mechanisms to try and improve our schedule, such as our signal poles are generally a 6 to 9 month lead time. So those are items we're going to look to purchase ahead of time and have those ready for the contractor, that it's not something that they're buying and then waiting on. And then the coordination with the railroad on how best we can help them get in and out, what construction work we need to get done so that they can come and get it done, because they would not open that crossing until there's signals together, everything's bought off, and everything is completed. So there's a lot of finer details that we'll be working through with them in the next few months while the utilities are doing all their relocations so that we can hit the ground running when we get out into construction. And any questions on the Fernhill Maple and my contact?
Councillor Falconer.
Did I mishear you? Did you say Zipley is planning to underground?
Correct.
And
No.
so you did hear me.
Yeah, they're going
I
under.
did hear you correctly. Sorry.
Yes.
I don't remember if you pointed out sort of where they run, but I guess maybe my really dumb question is, why isn't everyone?
It's a separate permit with the state, with the railroad, and it's up to the utilities. So utilities can operate in the railroad or they can operate in right of way at their own, and it's up to them if they want to stay on the pole or if they want to go underground. Underground is generally more expensive for them, and so not many go. And with the amount of utilities on the poles right now, that was one of the, I believe, governing reasons why Zipley chose to go under. It's easier permitting in the underground, but it's a lot more expensive and a lot more intricate for the utility.
Yeah, it's just such an opportunity, and I'm sad because, poles are also dangerous. I mean, they are, and for multiple reasons. So I'm a little sad about it. Not that you can do anything about it. I just wanted to share that. The other gripe that I'm sure my colleagues are sick of hearing about, in addition to being a driver on this road frequently, I'm also a runner on this trail. And currently, I don't know if you're familiar at all, but all of the stop stripes are yards away from the stop sign and beyond the pedestrian crossings currently. And so cars who are approaching the highway, they drive over top of the crossing beyond the stop sign without looking left or right for people who are using the trail. And I think I'm not sure, but can you point out whether or not that will continue to be the case? Or, I mean, I see the markings for the crosswalks themselves, but I'm not sure I see the stop lines on.
The stop lines will fall roughly where you've got the double markings, so they are further back.
Say you're coming, you're driving south on Maple Street and you're going to take a right onto the highway. Currently, the stop stripe is all the way out onto the highway beyond the crosswalk.
Yeah, and we're pulling it back behind.
We're putting it behind again. Okay. And is that sort of county's typical standard? I'm just wondering, maybe that's not ODOT standard. I'm not sure why it was striped this way to begin with, but I'm curious.
Generally comes down, they want the cars to stop ahead so they come to the stop and ease into the intersection, so it's not just a free right. And the idea is that when you've got the stop, you're supposed to stop at the crosswalk.
They don't.
Yeah. I'm also a runner. Yeah, I've had a few very close encounters. And part of the striping at this intersection, ODOT is the governing agency. And so part of the going through the design concurrence, them reviewing our plan details, it goes through their striping group and they tell us if we're meeting their requirement or so. But it's their standard to bring it back here, and the county generally follows that. We're trying to encourage more defensive driving and slower speeds.
Okay, so the design,
We'll bring it back, yeah.
we'll be bringing it back. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I'm going to ask a couple. Well, is there anything we can do to push up the timeline? Because, I mean, I'm just a little pressure point, but, and I want to give a shout out to Bonneville and to Keith for that poll. Like, I understand it was actually, I mean, just a little for the history of the audience, I don't know if you care, but the construction project was supposed to be done last year. And then there was this poll by Bonneville, and then we had to have it move. And Keith and city staff, like, we did a great job, like, working that out. And so I'm just going to be honest. I thought construction was going to be this summer. Like, I really did. And it is just such a dangerous intersection. It is such a dangerous intersection. And, I've been on this council for 12 years. This is my 12th year. And I know that when I came on in 2014, we were trying to work on this and having work sessions. And so it just feels like I'm letting down our community. Like, every time there's an accident and someone gets hurt, we all look at ourselves in the mirror and we're like, what are we doing? And I know we're doing all we can. And I really do. And I want to give a shout out for MSTIP, this is Washington County Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program funding. Like, we need to protect that. I was wishing Mr. Feek would be here so I could tell him the next time you go testify at the board, like, say, protect MSTIP. But I'm just wondering, is there anything the city can do? Can we write a letter to the railroad? Is there any way we can get this expedited so we can start on this sooner?
That's one of the things so online is Matt Meyer. He's the principal over this with me, and he just went through 3 rail orders with the rail in 3 different projects. So we do have an understanding, and that's what we're trying to tackle now, because, as I said, we're permitted at this crossing. And what we're trying to do with the railroad is always share all the information. So when Daniel Stewart passed away about 5 years ago now, I think it was, we shared that information with the railroad, explain, like, we've had a fatality here. We need to get this. And now we've had another wreck. We're going to share that information with them again. Say, listen, this is a major concern for us. Bonneville's moving. This is a last stretch, and trying to really grease the wheels with them to see what we can do. If anything comes up in our conversation, I'll definitely be reaching out to Greg and following up through those channels to make what the city can help us with to scoot the rail along to get us unnecessary permits.
Great. And we thank you, because we are cooperative. We're collaborative. We have great staff. We appreciate the work the county's doing. Bonneville, Keith, I mean, we understand that it takes all of us doing our part. And however we can support you, because it supports us, right? Like, this is definitely important. So I appreciate, I'm happy that it's moving forward. I'm just, of course, want it to be done sooner. So, okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on now to our ordinances and resolutions. We have our second reading of ordinance 2026-01, amending Forest Grove Code of Ordinances, Title 11, Business Regulations, Chapter 110. I guess I don't need to read all of this. And I'm going to turn it over to our city recorder, Miss Mariah.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council held a public hearing on January 26th to consider Ordinance 2026-01. No public testimony was received and the public hearing was closed. Item is for the second reading of the ordinance, and no additional updates. There are no additional updates to the staff report.
Okay, and so we're not going to have a second reading. We're not going to open up public hearing or a second hearing, second public hearing. So are there any questions from council for staff? Any questions? I see no questions. Okay, so is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve ordinance number 2026-01.
Great, it was moved, ordinance 2026-01 was moved by Council President Valenzuela and seconded by Councilor Martinez. Any discussion? No, I'm just happy. Thank you, Mariah, for doing this work. It'll make everyone's job just more efficient and smooth and consistent. The state does these. Okay, will the city manager please read it by title only?
Ordinance 2026-01, amending Forest Grove Code of Ordinances, Title 11, Business Regulations, Chapter 110, Business Licensing, Section 110.070 through Section 110.999, amending liquor license guidelines and repealing Ordinance 2010-05.
Great, thank you. Do we need to do a roll call vote, or can I just do it? Okay, all those in favor of approving ordinance 2026-01, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, ordinance 2026-01 is approved by the Forest Grove City Council in a vote of 7-0. Now we will move on to council communications, and I'm going to start with our council president, Ms. Valenzuela.
Thank you. So we're meeting, we have our a special event with the Library Commission on Wednesday. So it's like our little retreat and special meeting with the potluck and things like that. So I don't have any news besides what I told you last time. From the CDBG, we had the in-person presentations. We heard from 13 organizations that are seeking funds for their projects related to housing, to improvements of sidewalks, and they were all great projects. We spent the weekend evaluating them, each of us, of course, individually, and then submitted our evaluation, our scores. And this Thursday, we will find out what the results were from those, from the presentations and our scoring for that. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Councilor Faulkner.
I had HLB, so Historic Landmarks. They will, we probably will end up seeing a draft of the downtown design in June, so very quickly. However, Matt stressed multiple times, it is in order to satisfy the grant. They were able to find someone to help, to do the work. So it will be a very rough draft, and they will welcome our feedback. So it's very important to understand, sort of I don't want to call it a place, but it will need work. It is a draft. And they'll understand that and understand that we'll have an opportunity as well. We saw that Neil stepped down. They had elections. Tim is the new chair. Jennifer will be vice chair, and George remains the secretary. Fun piece is that Jennifer will be liaising with the with Arts on the Glow Up Receptacle project. And so I'm excited to see what they do. They've sort of, had some of the conversation was like maybe it could potentially be almost like art gallery installation. So it would change frequently. So I think that's a pretty fun project, and I'm excited about it. And I think that's it.
That's a great project. Do you know why Neil stepped down?
He needed.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up, because Neil's done a lot of volunteer work with the city of Forest Grove, and so just want to say thank you to his commitment. And it's my understanding his wife Kathleen she's on the library commission as well. So I just want to say thank you. Okay. And sorry, I got off track. Next up, we have Councilor Gustafson.
I have nothing to report.
Okay. And then Councilor Marshall.
I have nothing to report either.
Okay. And then Councilor Martinez.
So Gills Creek Station, the community is trying to decide now between a manual versus an electronic reader board, which I guess there's not much cost difference, so it should be a no-brainer because they can manipulate the other one with a phone. So that's really the big thing with them right now.
Great. Thanks. And Councilor Schimmel.
When in CCE, the group had interest in the question of boards and commissions participating in the sanctuary training. I don't know if Tim and Jesse, you received that inquiry. your thought on
I
that?
don't have a response yet, but I did receive the inquiry and I've asked Human Resources about it, so I'll have more information on that later.
And then last week I was able to attend a housing opportunity day in Salem where over 100 housing advocates from around the state meet and identify 6 priorities to share with our elected representatives. And it was nice that they all hit on different elements of the housing continuum, from homelessness to homeownership, including tenant right, retaining as much of the homelessness budget that we lost from the federal government's part of that. So that was a good opportunity to connect with some other advocates and just commiserate on, the housing is kind of a sleeper topic this short cycle, but there are a number of bills that are being proposed. And then one thing I wanted to mention in our earlier session on immigration, I was able to talk to a special counsel from the state AG's office. His name's Dustin. Even what he was able to articulate very succinctly was the question of who is the rules enforcer, and that sort of challenges what is the backstop to this immigration enforcement. It's not clearly the court. It's not clearly Congress. It's they're wrestling with that question in their office: is who is the rules enforcer? And that's the challenge with when I was kind of vigorously sharing my thoughts earlier about litigation versus protection. It kind of stems from that conversation where if the court says that the backstop, then we're gonna pick. I mean, it's how do we slow the suffering, stop the suffering is a challenge.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? So just to clarify, he didn't have an answer of who the backstop was.
No, he posed the question. That's what I found enlightening, was that even within the AG's office, with the tremendous amount of effort they're putting into litigation, court orders are being ignored, hundreds of them. So the courts aren't the emphatic backstop. Is the unfortunate reality.
Okay,
it was a good conversation. I mean, they empathize with us a great deal. That office is working tirelessly. I greatly appreciate them.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm going to move over to our city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just a few updates. We recently and successfully renewed our Oak Leaves trademark through the Secretary of State's office. You'll see that on all of our website and letterhead and so forth. So,
Jesse, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear. What did we just renew?
So our Oak Leaves brand,
our
logo,
branding.
etc. Yeah, we have to approve that through the Secretary of State's office so that it's trademarked, and this is just a renewal of that trademark. Couple updates on some storefront remodels. You may have noticed this in the downtown area. The Wild Willow Studio is now complete. A couple ones that are in progress are Fry's Action Athletics and Casa Kiev by Adelante Maarez. All 3 of those were approved by the council, and one of them is complete and 2 are currently in construction. This is just kind of a heads up. Pursuant to the warrants analysis for 21st and Main, and a warrants analysis looks in depth at some of the traffic patterns associated with that intersection. The Traffic Review Board did approve a 4-way stop. That 4-way stop is moving ahead. We have purchased essentially all of the things to do it. Now it's just a matter of kind of rolling it out in a way that is very transparent, but also very intuitive, so that we don't have so that everybody is kind of accustomed to the change before the change is made, essentially. So You'll be seeing some changes coming up very soon in that 21st and Main. It will eventually go to a four-way stop, but it will start with, traffic pattern will be changing soon. Then we'll have pre-warning signs, and then we'll actually change the traffic pattern or the traffic signage. And then after that, the stuff that was notifying you will kind of go away, and then it'll become just permanent. But we want to make sure that it's implemented in a way that the community is very familiar with it before we change the signage. If that makes sense. So look for that coming soon. The city did apply for a $3 million capital grant for the police facility down at the state legislature. Our chief of police will be going down and testifying on that. It does have a committee hearing, not this week, but next week. The hearing got changed. I believe it's next Thursday. So staff has essentially drafted up some testimony, and the chief has been requested to come down and talk about the police facility. I believe we get 3 minutes. It's the standard time that we get in front of any committee. So let's see. Just a couple things. Pursuant to the council approving the remaining 3 firefighters in the budget, and recall that there were 4 added as a result of the last levy, we have now been able to staff on a very consistent basis 7 career firefighters per day. And just as a small metric for the month of January, or at least for the first 23 days in January, we were able to staff 2 units instead of just 1, 22 out of 23 days. So a marked increase in what our response capability has been over the month of January and as we look forward. The Public Works Administration remodel, if you have a chance to drive down 23rd Avenue, it is going vertical. It's got Tyvek wrapped all around it. They're starting to put finishes on it. It's looking really good. We've had a lot of renovations at the library, the reading tree, the children's area, but also some new furniture over by the fireplace. So a big thanks to the Library Foundation for all of that. So if you get a chance, please stop by the library. And that concludes my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Can I follow? I want to just make a little statement. The four-way stop on 21st and Main is the corner of Bullet and Brews, then Pizza Smizza, and then the Legion building. And I hope this person's not embarrassed, but I'm just going to get a little history lesson because I just want to encourage people. I really do value public comment. And so this traffic control change is due to Charlotte, one of our, can I say her first and last name? I don't know. I don't want to infringe on her privacy, but Charlotte wrote an email to council and said, hey, there's this traffic pattern. I feel it's dangerous. I think you need to take a look at it. And so this issue went to the traffic review board, and then the process started. And I mean, we all know that us government officials are slow. Everything is a little slower than we'd like, right, Councilor Schimmel? Doesn't happen in one term. I'm just giving him a bad time. But anyways, the deal is that it's going to be a whole lot better. And we're in this together. We all do it together. There's 7 of us that you elected to represent you, but by engaging with us, giving us your ideas, talking to us, hopefully we do make this the community that you feel safe in, that you want to live in, and that, you enjoy living in. So just a shout out to Charlotte, because I think she did good work there. Okay, I'm going to do my mayor's report before I get too preachy. I attended Bonamici's town hall on January 26th, and then the Attorney General, Representative McLean, Sosa, and Senator Solomon town hall on Friday. Yeah, just lots of work. We have lots of work to do. And the Region 1 Transportation recommended we are Region 1 Act, and we recommended our 5 projects for the SIP priorities. We did not rank them. We did not rank them in what was the most important. But the projects that we are going to move forward, or our act is moving forward, is the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project. And I want to go back to, I believe this was a 2017 transportation plan that was supposed to get done. TV Highway investment for the Bus Rapid Transit Project, the BRT project. The Sunrise Corridor Phase 2, Expressway 205 to 192nd, and the historic Columbia River Street Trail completion and arterial safety investment. But once again, we chose not to prioritize them because we just were like, hey, these are the 5 we're going to send through. I met with the Washington County mayors and the chair. That's a monthly meeting. Just something I think the community needs to be aware of, and the council, is that the board is considering increasing vehicle registration fees from $30 to $60. There would be a reading in May. If it's approved, the adoption would be in January. This money, if this revenue that they would earn would be restricted to transportation. And I think there would be like the city would also have some revenue, right, from this. So this is an FYI. And then CPOs, which are community, like what does CPO stand for? Like it's your community partnership organization. Participation, yeah, I couldn't remember. But it's like almost like a CCI for a city, but for the county. The county's reconfiguring that. CPOs will no longer exist. They're starting a new district-based committee, so that way they will be subject to public meeting, focus on county services. So that's a move. And then, it was unbeknownst to me, and I just want to follow up. This city council had sent a letter to the Washington County Commissioner about the use of flock, about their flock contract. And I learned from Chair Harrington on the 26th at Congresswoman Bonamici's town hall that they never received that. I don't know if you guys knew that, but that they had never received it. And then when I spoke to our district, that's District 4 Commissioner Jerry Willey, he was like, I don't know if you guys picked it up, but he seemed a little like, what are you talking about? And so that's why. So I think they are having a work session coming up on that. And the jail capacity expansion, funding and different things, the absolute earliest that expansion would happen and open would be 2032. So it's yeah. And then today I met with Washington County Coordinating Committee, and we got a vote, and I want to say thank you to the WCCC that they approved $1.3 million. I mean, it's not exact. And that money will be used for that TV highway, or the TV Highway U Street intersection project and Highway 47 and Martin Road. So that will come back to Forest Grove and help ODOT with those projects to make Forest Grove safer. I think that's all I want to discuss. Okay, so that's all I have. Thank you all for coming tonight, and I'm going to adjourn this meeting. You guys, we're done in hour.